Hi, I'm Thomas of Meaningful Gigs, and welcome back to Heroes of the Creative Revolution. In this episode, I speak with Martin Dowson about valuing the impact of design. He talks about how he's made sure that design is taken seriously by other business units, his own transition from design leader to business leader, how he's gotten design teams bought into overall brand and org goals, and much, much more. Let's dive in. Hi, Martin. Thanks for coming on the show. Would love to start simple and just get some more information about you and your background in design.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on and joining you. I kind of fell into design. I went to university to do a computer science degree, ended up coming out with a psychology degree, which is a whole story in itself. And I went into management consulting, which I didn't enjoy in the first 6 months, and found a group of people who were doing user research, usability testing and user research for digital development websites. And so I fell into, with my psychology degree, becoming a UX researcher, and then from there into UX design, and then on into service design. It really was the psychology of understanding human behavior and human needs that led me into design, rather than the creative juice of being somebody with a visual design craft, if you like, at a time when I think a lot of people around me would have considered that design was something that you had a visual craft for, if you like. I kind of didn't really admit that I was a designer for years. As a result of this massive imposter syndrome, but now I'm happy to own it.
How have you been successful in unlocking the value of design within businesses?
So my whole kind of design career has been built off the back of the fact that I was also starting in management consultancy, also starting with a business background, also starting with a little bit of technology, because I did half a computer science and AI degree. Part of my experience with unlocking the value of design in business has been about being able to understand design's position and contribution to the business outcomes, and being able to understand why and how the businesses that I'm working for are chasing those outcomes. I think that at times, as junior to mid designers earlier on in our career, we're not exposed to that enough, and we see the business as something other than our team in design. So I've had a lot of experience in my career of doing both of those things. So I, first of all, try to get clear on the difference between design as production and design as strategy. So a lot of that overlap between those areas comes, especially when you start to talk about design at a strategic level. But there is a lot of design work that is the result of the fact that business has a particular outcome that it wants to achieve. It has a particular strategy to do that. There are products that are going to be developed in order to do that. And design has a production role in getting those products out to market. And there's a huge amount of experience for designers to have in learning their craft in doing that. But helping a business understand the difference between that and the moment when design at a kind of more strategic level can help them understand what they should be developing, why, when, and where, and how that helps their business, is a very different conversation as to placing the discipline and craft of UI, UX, product design into the production environment. So it's really important to be able to be clear on that. The other thing I like to talk about is considering design as a noun versus as a verb. So the act of design, the act of designing, is something that many people do, not just the people, noun, who are designers, right? So design is ultimately the act of planning with intent towards an outcome. There are loads of people that do that in business. However, our approach and mindset that we have as designers is not one that everybody has experience of taking on board. So the other way that I like to show value of design in an organization is how we can share those mindsets with other people in the organization so they can use that to augment what they do. That in itself, in turn, creates demand for more and better designers in the organization. And then finally, I'd say, from inside design, use research to understand your stakeholders. That goes back to understanding your context within the business. So use your design skills to understand your stakeholders, and then you will become better at empathizing with them and helping them understand the outcomes that they need. Those are principles for how to be able to answer the value of design for your business, because there's no one right answer to that.
How have you been able to make sure that design is valued by the other business units and departments within a brand?
There are some of the things that design does and kind of leads on that the rest of the business doesn't necessarily fully yet understand why it's of value to them. And we can be sometimes a little bit myopic about these things as their value to us. And the thing I'm talking about is design systems. So design systems very often talked about how we can make design more effective, how we can scale up our design teams by giving them design systems to make sure that they can have more coherent, I like the word coherent rather than consistent, but coherent designs operating at scale, onboard more designers into that. But there's very often design systems are actually pattern libraries because they're very focused on what the designer needs to do. When you do a design system really, really well, and I learned this from some great people who worked with me. A fantastic lady called Lily Dart, who ran a design system for us at Lloyd's. Really properly and truly integrating a design system. It's a pattern library of design artifacts, but also of code artifacts. And that means that the design system very often in an organization is going to bring a huge amount more benefit to engineering in terms of cost savings, efficiencies, and things like that than it might do with design. So when we looked at the value of a design system inside Lloyd's, we found 70% of the value delivered was to engineering and 30% of the value was delivered to design. And we had to then look and say, what else is this doing? Who else is the stakeholders that could be making use of this? Repositioning the design system as something that was able to help brand digitally govern the brand, because what we were doing was giving them a method and a tooling set that would allow them to express the brand digitally with a kind of governance and control, totally transformed the relationship that marketing then had with this element of design. So there's some really interesting ways when you begin to understand how other stakeholders might make use of the assets, the tools, the processes, the approaches that you have within design. You've got to really start to understand what they care about. So, we had to really understand that marketing cared about governing their brand and how it turned up, but they didn't necessarily have as much experience in digitizing that into digital journeys. They had experience of putting it into advertising that went out to digital, but not into digitally designed experiences. So we were able to help them with that, but we had to find out what they cared about the most and then help them understand how our systems might help them with that, rather than just try and tell them that this is important because we and the engineers want to get coherent designs out there at scale, right?
How have you been successful in getting the design team bought into the larger business goals of the organization?
One of the things that I've seen really successfully done by design or design leaders is helping a product owner to humanize those OKRs, right? So those OKRs are typically very kind of like MBA, commercial strategy type language. And one of the superpowers I think that design has is to be able to take language like that and turn that into more human language in terms of like customer impact and why that then connects to the commercial outcomes. So that's one thing I'd love to see more from design. But in order for designers to be able to help product owners with that, we have to come back to that empathizing and understanding your stakeholders. So I've tried to spend as much time as I can with mid to senior designers and emerging design leaders, helping them understand that if we want to be able to have a more meaningful, deeper impact through our design work, we have to understand the means by which the companies that we work with are seen to be successful. So companies will have various statements and objectives in their kind of financial reports or in their missions that may well have some great customer language in them about being customer centric or meeting customer needs or achieving certain things for customers, like we want them to have to bring prosperity to their life, for example, or to simplify their financial lives. You need to find an opportunity as a design team to take those things and try and unpack those for an organization and help them understand what that really means to customers, and then work with product owners to understand those commercial and kind of product feature objectives that they have and see whether these things align. It's not an easy job to do, but I think there's also an element of, especially in large-scaled organizations, that design teams need to understand there will be times at which what you are being tasked to do is to achieve a very pure business outcome around potentially growth of something or the efficiency of something, and you need to just focus on the fact that that is the business outcome that you're looking to try and achieve, and use your design skills to try and find all the great and interesting and innovative ways in which you can do that. The demonstration that you can help that outcome be shifted is going to build a trust level with people like product owners, that when they come to set the next round of OKRs or the next set of visions, you can kind of elevate that conversation and go, there's other statements in this company's mission and purpose that I'm not sure we're hitting yet, and maybe we should look at how we can achieve that. So it's an ongoing conversation, but it starts with design teams trying to just take some basic understanding of the commerciality of the business, and how necessary that is for the business to continue to exist, to be able to then reach the larger objectives.
So what metric or metrics do you recommend that design leaders track, no matter where they are?
Without saying a particular metric, I'm going to give two themes, because I think that you're going to have to work out, how people care about the metrics that you do report on, and it's going to depend on your particular organization. But I would care about two themes of metrics as particularly important. The first theme is indeed the business outcomes that everybody's trying to achieve here. You have got to find a way to be mapping into those. So I would be tracking those business outcome metrics and trying to create a connection between the design activities and those metrics. The second thing is any set of metrics that help you understand the quality of the environment within which your teams are designing, because that is incredibly important to the quality of the outcome and the outputs that your teams have. Now that could be, softer metrics around the cultural ceremonies that you have. It could be harder metrics around retention and feedback from the teams. But you need to work out where the main barriers are, but something about the quality of the environment that your team is designing it within, and the connection between design's activities and the business outcomes that your stakeholders care about.
Well, thank you, Martin. That was my last question. Is there anything else you want to say to the audience, or anything that you want to plug?
It's a job that will never quite fully be done. The measuring the value of design is something that you have to feel your way around inside your organization. But it's it is achievable and it is doable. I think you need to focus on two things. One is like a really hard connection to business outcomes, and you also need to find that way to show what people might call as intangibles, but they're not intangible. They're just qualitatively different ways in which design impacts and adds value to an organization, and just understand that there's two different sides to that value of design. There's a hard metric and there's a soft kind of impact as well. And keep chasing it, because it's there and it can be done. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great.